Forget other people. It doesn't matter if Bill's being an arsehole, Sharon's giving you the passive-aggressive silent treatment, or John's work isn't up to scratch. It doesn't matter what other people do or how they respond. No matter what happens, you have a choice about the sort of communicator you want to be. It's not about other people. It's about you. If you want to improve your success at work and in your personal relationships, the single most important thing you can do is take personal responsibility for your communication and behaviour. I'm talking about extreme responsibility with no room for, yeah, but. Of course, as I have mentioned before, it's easier to blame other people for making you communicate a certain way. That's why most people do it. But remember that no matter how others communicate with you or what the situation or circumstance, you have the power to choose your response and behaviour. You get to choose how someone or something impacts you. It's time to reclaim your power and get conscious about the choices you make. Why? Because if you don't make a choice to take personal responsibility for your communication, you'll never be able to communicate consistently and effectively. You'll never be able to implement the fifth of the 5 C's if your response is dependent on how other people behave. Choice is why other communications training you've done may not have worked. Choice is why you're in this predicament. And choice is what's going to set you free. Yeah, but Leah, you haven't been through what I've been through. You haven't faced the pressure I've faced. You haven't worked for a boss like I have. You haven't been in charge of a team like my team. You haven't experienced the grief, tragedy, devastation, and challenges I have. No, I haven't. But your circumstances need not determine your choices. Your power to choose transcends even the toughest of circumstances. And if you don't believe me, believe Viktor Frankl. You'll never be able to communicate effectively under pressure if you're a pinball to your emotions and circumstance. Maybe you bottle up your feelings and explode, cry the minute you're challenged, snap aggressively when stressed, or get defensive when someone gives you feedback. These responses will all have a negative impact on your communication, whether or not you achieve the outcome you want, and how others perceive you. That doesn't mean you shouldn't show feeling or emotion. Vulnerability plays a crucial role in fostering connection, trust, and respect. But it does mean learning how to communicate consciously. It means being deliberate in your response and managing yourself so that you can communicate and express how you feel in the way you choose. Rather than communicating as a reaction, you are in control. A lack of control is why many people struggle to implement specific communication skills, such as active listening, receiving difficult feedback, or delivering an unpopular message. Although they know what to do, they can't put it into practice. Knowing and doing are 2 very different things. Your competency to do your job, particularly if you're a leader, will be judged against how you control your reactions and emotions. It may even be what holds you back from getting a job in the first place. I know people who have missed out on promotions not because they lacked experience, but because they lacked the ability to stay calm under pressure. It's one of the core competencies for a good leader. Again, it will often be your soft skills and not your technical ability that will be your undoing. You don't have to be a confident extrovert to communicate effectively, but you do have to be brave. There are times when you have to be courageous enough to speak up, even when it's uncomfortable and even when you're scared or nervous. As Maggie Kuhn, American social justice activist and founder of the Grey Panthers aged rights movement, said in 1977, "Leave safety behind, put your body on the line, stand before the people you fear and speak your mind. even if your voice shakes. When you least expect it, someone may actually listen to what you have to say. Well-aimed slingshots can topple giants. Maybe you hate conflict. Perhaps you're passive or shy and prefer to sit back and listen. You may have been telling yourself that you're not confident enough to have difficult conversations for years. It may have become part of your story, a limiting belief. I'm an introvert, so I can't communicate well. Or perhaps you've tried and failed to stand up for yourself in the past. You've been burnt when communicating under pressure before, so now you avoid those conversations. Maybe you work for an aggressive and domineering boss and have decided silence is your safest option. Well, I'm about to shake things up. You can communicate effectively under pressure, even if you're a passive communicator and even if you're scared. It's not about confidence, it's about courage, and it's time to get brave. Being assertive and having the courage to stand up for yourself won't always get you the outcome you want, but that is not always the most important thing. Sometimes you simply need to be heard. You may need your voice and message on the record because you need to cover your ass. In the midst of the global financial crisis, around 2008, I was working on a public project that went over budget. The price of materials doubled overnight, there was union trouble and costs blew out. I was the communications manager. It was public money funding the project and there was a risk that news of the overrun would break in local media. I was the youngest person in the executive meeting by a long shot and one of only 2 women. One of the more senior and dominant men at the table argued the best approach was to say nothing about the budget blowout publicly and quietly work to bring cost overruns back in as much as possible. I thought it was a terrible idea. As a former journalist, I knew if the story leaked, which it almost certainly would, the damage to the organisation would be enormous. We would be caught on the back foot, look evasive and dishonest, and have no control over the angles of stories pursued. We'd be at the mercy of the journalists, responding to their agenda. It would be a disaster. So, I took a deep breath and said so. Although we would take a hit, I argued, we had to put the news out proactively, openly and honestly. There were legitimate reasons for the budget overrun and we would have a chance to explain them if we controlled the messages. We could only do that if we released the story. Yes, it would result in negative publicity, but we had a chance of minimising the damage this way. Thankfully, after much discussion, the management team agreed with me. However, if they had not, my courage to speak up would have covered my butt. If I had said nothing out of fear and the story had blown up in the media, guess who would have taken the fall? Me, the communications manager. I was in the room for that meeting. I was a former journalist. Why hadn't I said anything? That's how the dialogue would have played out. My complicity in a poor decision would have led to my demise. So speak up. Even if people choose to ignore you or to take a different approach, get your opinion on the record. Be heard and then document what you said in writing somewhere. In short, cover your ass.